Hey guys, I'm Nathaniel. I'm a former student at AIT here in Sydney. I'm so excited because I've just been invited to talk to Matt Estela. Let's go inside and check it out. It's Houdini. How is it used in the VFX industry?
So Houdini's a 3D package. It's known for doing procedural workflows. And what is interesting is that where it seems to have, it's well known for doing explosions and things catching fire or being flooded with water and stuff, but more and more it's getting into its more procedural side. So stuff, this oddball problem solving, I think, is where it shines really, really well.
If I was to say the words such as tech, I, and social, can you please tell me a little bit more about why these words are so meaningful?
Yeah. So this is a constant pet theory of mine in terms of how people in our industry can be graphed. So if we were to draw a triangle and put tech, art, and social at the points of those triangles, and you can generally sort of plot most people somewhere on that triangle. And what I've always said is that as much as people often self-identify as being very extreme on one end of those points, often they're not. They're often a mix of 2 or 3 skills. And I think one of the ideals, which is impossible to achieve, but it's a good aim, is to try to aim for the center. You want to be, so the example I often say is an R&D person might be very heavily skewed on the tech side, a person who works in concept art might be very skewed on the art side, and a producer would be heavily swayed on the social side. But really, an R&D person has to be able to, has to see the outputs of the plugin that they're making and know that it looks good, and be able to work with people. A concept artist has to be able to use a lot of the modern tools we use these days and be able to deliver stuff on time. And a producer has to know a lot of technical stuff these days and be able to push back if things aren't looking great, or more importantly, if things are looking good enough, and to call it and say, we should move on to something more important now. This shot is finaled.
Houdini is known for like a steep learning curve. So is there any other resources, even like your own website, that you would recommend for beginners at Houdini?
I think once you sort of get an understanding of its core methodology, I've always felt it's actually easy to learn than other apps because it's so internally consistent. But in terms of resources, yeah, my site, it's pretty good. But side effects themselves are actually investing a lot of time and effort these days into making some great video material. The internal docs are pretty good. And there's more and more third-party resources, so things like CD Circuit and Rebelway, and individuals like Paul Estevez does some great work. There's more resources now than has ever been, and I think it's also nice that people are beginning to specialize. So if you want to focus on doing, say, motion graphics kind of stuff, Paul Estevez is great. If you want to learn purely about explodey, effectsy stuff, Nipping has a great series of stuff. You can go as general or as niche as you want.
Talking about resources and even mentioning your own personal site that you started, the CG Wiki.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit more about how that started, and do you have any plans for its future?
Right. So it started purely as a way to deal with my short-term memory, where I would learn something and then know that I would forget it if I didn't write it down. So I'd write it down. And then for a while, it was sort of known as a little quiet resource for the Maya community. But when I learned Houdini, now it must be nearly 10 years ago now, which is strange to say out loud, I was learning so much at such a rapid rate of knots that I knew I had to write it down, otherwise it was never gonna, I would just lose it. So I put down such a volume of tips at such a rapid pace that when I realized, there's actually quite a few tips here, and I shared it around, and then suddenly got noticed, and it became this, sort of perpetual motion machine where the more tips I made, the more popular it got, the more opportunities I got, and so now I feel the compulsion to write things on it that wasn't really the original intent, but it's definitely become the thing now where I like to put things on it because it helps people.
How do you actually address note-taking, especially when there are complex scripts and nodes, and if you've got 5 shots that you're working on, or you're making multiple passes and renders out in a day? But do you reflect over the week and do it on a weekend? How do you manage that?
Yeah, note taking and recording of stuff. Something about node-based systems like Houdini, like Nuke. It's useful to be able to put notes in context. So if you can put a post-it note right next to the particular thing that you need to put notes on, that's great. So it's all spatially in the same place. Beyond that, I use a variety of note-taking tools, and often the kind of notes I use to keep track of my progress. In the same way that I'm using notes, like sticky notes within Houdini, within context at the point where that needs to be, I try to apply that with everything else. So if I have notes on a render, I might email myself a screenshot of the render and then put notes next to the email so that they're tagged together. A lot of places these days will use production tools like Flow, Shotgun, whatever that's called these days, so that you can put notes in context of the thing. But even in as far as I might grab actual sticky notes and stick it onto the monitor so that I know I see it the following day if I'm closing down for the day. Just knowing that my own memory is unreliable, and that if you're in a position where you're task switching frequently, you just can't rely on some mind palace of memorization. It's like putting notes in the context of where you'll see them again, I find is a really useful, important tip.
What would be like a checklist for emerging talent to focus on to increase their success?
Right. So I think echoing some of the earlier answers, be output focused, I think is important. I think it's very easy when you're starting out to do all the tutorials and ingest and watch, but not actually do. And I think you've got to make sure that you actually have something to show, even from the early days. I think be cognizant of the tech. Be aware of what people are actually using in industry. You don't have to learn it all immediately, but just know that there is some North Star of if all the animators are using Maya, you better learn Maya. If all the comp is using Nuke, you got to learn Nuke. And I think the other one, which is very easy to forget, but is really important, is you've got to stay socially engaged. This industry often attracts a lot of introverted people, and if you let that side of you take over, you can miss opportunities. So I can think of several people I know who they would be very talented, but they didn't go out on the night of some event's drinks, or they didn't go meet the people, the friends at the pub. And someone who wasn't as good as them but happened to be there, they're the ones who get the opportunities. So you've got to be out there a bit.
The recent release of Houdini 20.5, is there any exciting new features that you like personally, and kind of more leaning into what you just said earlier about really leaning into emerging technology? Yeah.
The new compositing stuff is very cool. So Houdini's always had a built-in compositor that has, I think they would agree with this, has not been great. It's been very old and a little bit unused, unloved, but we're still capable of doing some really interesting things because it was integrated into Houdini. The new composite that they just released is that times 1,000. So it's not Nuke. It doesn't do there's no roto, it doesn't do comps, it doesn't do green screen or anything like that. But in terms of its integration with all the 3D stuff Houdini can do, plus all of its sort of procedural background, plus the ability now to manipulate images in quite interesting ways, it's an intriguing little playground. It's quite good fun.
And in regards to your work-life balance, is there any advice on how you maintain that in a healthy way?
If you ask my family, I don't maintain that balance. I think it's, as much as I like to be jaded about this industry and be very cynical, it's a passion. I still love it. I've been doing this for 25 years or so. I still love it. I still, when I should be watching TV, I'm actually sort of quietly on the laptop and I'm learning something new. I just love the joy of discovering new things, of learning new things, of staying frosty. So the work-life balance, but trying to be aware of it, trying to understand that maybe I should put it down for a bit and go play with the kids, and especially if I were to talk to my younger self, Yeah, maybe you don't have to stay back and polish the pixels quite that much until 10 p.m. every night. Maybe you could get out a little bit earlier and enjoy life some.
And just to finish it off, DOPS or POPs?
See, that's a trick question. The answer is tops. No one uses tops. Tops is amazing. Everyone should use tops.
Thank you for your time.
It's all right.